Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, one of the things that I'm slowly learning is that we are all creators now, whether we like it or not, and whether we realise it or not, especially when we're sharing real-time news on social media or editing photos and videos and so much more before sharing and entertaining and inspiring people all over the world with our creations. And, of course, while also celebrating our individuality. But what apps do you use to do your editing? There are so many out there, many of which are hidden behind a gazillion amount of paid options. But I recently discovered an app called Polarr, which is a video and photo editor made by creators for creators. And its unique sharing ecosystem is designed to enable creativity within the creator community by empowering creators to establish their visual identity and express their individuality through the filters that they create. But what really caught my eye is that Polarr is also committed to ensuring its creators are fairly compensated for their creativity and allow them to monetize the workflows that they create. So with the divide in the current creator economy between those profiting handsomely off their creativity and those not receiving any compensation at all, I felt compelled to invite them on the podcast today and find out more. And thankfully, they said yes. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Borui Wang from Polarr is going to talk about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Borui. I'm the founder and CEO of a startup called Polarr. It's spelled Spollarr. And, my day-to-day job is to make sure our company solves real problems for our customers and contribute to the world, I guess, making impact to our users, which is millions of very young teenager creators that we have here.
Awesome. And I'd love to take you back before Polarr and try and learn more about your love of technology, where it came from, and what put you on this path of wanting to make an impact on the world with technology. So how did you get here? What's your origin story and what lit that spark in you?
I think, there's no singular story that really led to what I'm doing today. Usually is a mix of things I discovered when I was younger, but the common thread is just technology felt pretty magical, right? Especially when I was when I first discovered Wi-Fi, I guess that was, 12 or 13 years old. Before that, everything was wired connection. And the fact that you can just get data through the air, that felt like magical, right? So, there's this saying that any advanced technology advanced enough is indistinguishable from magic. I think I really felt that way. And then power of creativity is also another main thread. It is not just the curiosity, but also I learned how to use Photoshop and then 3D tools pretty early in my life. And then the feeling that you could just control like a mouse and a keyboard and then provide some input, you can create something coming to life. That power of creativity is also what drew me into what I'm doing today. Is think about how technology can enable creativity, especially for people who don't really have the necessary tools, right? Like, if you think about art supplies, if you don't have a rich family, you don't really have a lot of access to art and supplies or room or space or canvases. But now you can just do art with your phone on a screen. So those are the things that really inspire me to start what I'm starting today.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. There is something quite magical about technology, and especially around creativity. I think a lot of people forget that in our pockets we've got a smartphone which enables anyone to be a creator. In fact, we are arguably all creators anyway with how we create news feeds and upload content without even realising it. And your personal path led you to Polarr, which is a video and photo editor made by creators for creators. But many people listening will have several editing apps on their phone, and it is a crowded market. You don't need me to tell you that. So can you tell me the story behind the company, what you set out to create, and what makes you different from those other apps out there?
If you think about the need for creator, it's number one is people want to be able to express themselves, which is just a creative expression. I think it's an inherent human need. The other is creative control. Is how can I control what I'm expressing in a precise way I want to express it. So when Polarr started, the thought is always about how to scale creativity to enable both of them. It is how do I express myself, how do I control it. And so at the beginning we thought about how do people not just use tools but also create tools for others. As a developer, I know how to program, and I learned computer science, so I'm able to create tools and workflows for other creators to use. But a lot of creators, they don't really know how to program, but they still have a certain vision of creativity, and they want to make tools for others. So Polarr at the beginning, it was all about how do we get people to create workflows for other people. So as a photo editing app, you edit your photo or video, and then you can also convert your process every step of the way into a workflow. We call it, you can call it a filter, call it a recipe, and then you can share your workflow with others. And then today we have more than a million of such workflows generated every month. So effectively, what we wanted to do is to allow creators to basically create their own little photo editing and video editing apps for others through our platform. And that's the really differentiating nature of our platform. It's not you coming in, you just want to edit photo or video. It's more about you have a vision of how you want to edit and your content, and you want to share the editing process with other people and other creators.
And I love those workflows that you can create, almost recipes, as you mentioned there. And as someone that downloads way too many apps, I took a look at Polarr, and one of the first things that stood out for me straight away was that I couldn't see any features hidden behind paywalls, and that seems to be the case, or the opposite seems to be the case with so many apps now. So was that something that was important to you right from the beginning?
As a company, the goal is always to pursue a new scalable business model for a new type of ecosystem. Monetization is always important for us, but it's also a matter of when and what. So over the last couple of years, we had a few different models of monetization. Most of them are small experiments trying to understand what our users' needs are. But so far, all the monetization we had is really a stopgap solution to self-fund the company, to reduce the runway. For our kind of platform, the only way that we think it's gonna be sustainable down the future is really how to enable creators to make money. And then we make them successful, and then we can take a cut from that. I think that's what we discovered, that's the actual need for the creators, right? We don't want to monetize all of the need from what creators want. And by that nature, just so far, any paywall is not part of the need of the creators. Creators want to use as many tools as available to express their creativity. And in our case, if you actually charge them to use tools, it will actually limit their ability to make workflows to impact other people. So we're very, very careful in terms of at what point we think it's ready to start monetizing the right way, and then like I kind of hinted a little bit is in the next couple quarters, what we're really trying to get to is allowing creators to start to monetize their workflows on top of their users, and then help them make money. And we can make revenue on top of the money we help creators to make.
It's an incredibly cool concept there, and I love how you're helping ensure creators are fairly compensated for their creativity, whether that be their work or their workflows. But can you tell me how that works and how creators can take the first steps of monetizing their unique visual identity? What's the best way of them getting up and running and leveraging this technology?
So in Polarr, we don't really own the recipes and workflows. The creators own them. We're providing the tools, and we facilitate them to make these workflows. But ultimately, it's their ideas and their creativity, and they need to have ownership. So far, we have been buying some of these intellectual properties from them, licensing their intellectual property. So we actually pay creators for some of the workflows that we resell to a bigger audience, which is, again, a temporary stopgap. But ultimately, for creators to monetize, they need to find an audience that the audience resonate with them, and then be able to organize and communicate and a catalog of virtual items, in our case is workflows, that's very relevant to their audience, and be able to have transactions, order flows, and all these capabilities in the marketplace. So for Polarr creators over the next couple of quarters, it's going to be their ability to really control how they want to distribute their workflows to their fans, and how much they want to charge it for, setting certain limitations. Those are the things we're going for. But outside Polarr, if you're a creator today, I think there's multitude of apps like Patreon allow you to set up your own basically shop to monetize on your audience, having a closer engagement with them. So there's already many tools creators can start to use to monetize and make a living. But that's the same direction we're moving to as well.
And I suspect anyone listening that has spent any time in creative communities, whether it be online forums or even in the workplace or education, most creatives will tell you that there is this increasing divide in the current creator economy between those that are profiting really handsomely off their creativity and those that aren't being compensated at all. So how do we get beyond this challenge, do you think?
There's definitely creators with a large audience base who are very attractive to brand marketers, or performance marketers, and on the flip side, there's also a long tail of medium-sized, smaller creators who can have a very unique voice and have very unique creations that resonate with a smaller audience space. I think the problem right now is there isn't enough education and infrastructure built for the smaller macro audience base. The smaller and macro creators. The majority of the tools and platforms are really built for the much bigger creators. But it's getting better. Every quarter there's a bunch of new creator economy startup launched. A lot of them start to target the smaller creators and really give them the same tools and capabilities to control their audience, monetize their audience in a similar way that bigger creators can do. So I think it's a matter of the infrastructure being built up, and also a matter of how does a creator can find their own niche. And then if that goes well, I think it doesn't really matter really how big you are. You should be able to monetize if you want to, with the right tools.
And I was also reading that I think there's over 75% of your users are Gen Z. So for me, that Polarr is in a unique position to identify the latest trends amongst those Gen Z creators. So what kind of trends are you seeing?
First of all, I think there's a pursuit of creativity being part of their identity, where they treat the ability to do creative things of a self-worth. When I grew up, most of my friends and myself is more like, we need to have good grades and we need to do really well in school. But I think Gen Z today, they realize that society really rewards and recognizes having original, authentic ideas and being creative. So they have a very strong drive to have their individual creativity expressed, recognized, and rewarded. That's the first thing that we observe to be different. The second thing is they're very protective of their identity. So they don't like people copying each other's ideas. They like to be very authentic, very genuine, and they want to be unique. and have their own voice and develop their own languages. So I think that's also a very interesting development that we see emerging from our community, is all the creators of our Polarr workflows and filters. They really strive for having something that's unique and different from other creators. They don't want something that's similar. And when they felt like there is some inspiration they got from other creators, they usually call it out and credit them, saying, okay, like I actually got inspiration from these other creators, and this is like how my creation is sourced from. And I think that level of just making sure like they respect each other's ownership and then be protective about their own creativity is very unique to this generation.
And listening to you there, that reminded me of something that when I was researching you guys, or something that you said was around your belief that as Web3 continues to make its way into various industries, all headlines around the metaverse being about ownership. But your belief is it will largely be guided by that drive for individuality and identity. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So if you think about metaverse, the very liberating thing about metaverse is you can choose your avatar. You can be who you are. Most of us couldn't choose our gender, our race, or how tall we are. Those are just not choice that we had options for. But for in the metaverse, you could be anything. You could be a fluffy animal, or you could be an alien, and you could change your hair, change your facial structure. So identity is a big piece where people can actually be whoever they want to be, and I think that's very powerful and liberating. And because of that, everything you do, everything you consume, every music you listen to, or virtual food you're eating, it's an expression of your identity. And so it's just going to be a lot more obvious, right? Today, people spend a lot of time in their apartment trying to pick up different furnitures, and hopefully, like sometimes their friends will come over, and their friends can get a sense of what this person is like. But in the metaverse, building an apartment is a lot more easier, and then people can teleport into your space at any given time. So your ability to express yourself is a lot more scalable and a lot more obvious. So that's what I think. Identity, it's integrated into all the ownership you have, all the belongings you have in the metaverse, and that's the way I think the future is going to be.
It is an incredibly exciting road that we're on there as we head towards Web3. But I'm curious, from Polarr's perspective, what's your grand vision for the future, and what excites you personally about where all this is heading?
So for us, go back to the story about technology being very powerful for enabling creativity. I think in the future, creative throughput and output is going to be a lot better and bigger and more scalable. Today, you have creators who are dancing in their dorms or their mom's basement. Tomorrow, you have indie creators actually working together to make the next Netflix film. So I think there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, very similar to how developers so far have been able to collaborate on GitHub, where all these apps and software are not written by one person, right? It's an act of collaboration, and people are standing on top of other people's open source project and software. That's how like Silicon Valley functions today. I think there will be a Silicon Valley type of phenomena happening for the creative content creators, where they can really come together, they can collaborate, they can work together to make content that they couldn't do it by each individual themselves. And that's what we are working on largely in the company as well. Is the creator workflow is really meant to make creating certain arts and artifacts and content easier, so you don't have to worry about how this color, how these effects work. Someone else already made it for you, so you can focus on something you're really good at. And then if you think about workflows could be a dance sequence, workflows could be a structure of a comedy writing. So building these structure on top of each other and getting people to work together, so people can be more efficient and making higher quality content. That's where I think the world is heading. So in 10 or 20 years, it won't be a stretch to say, okay, like here's just a bunch of small creators that are able to put together a film that looks like today's Avenger movies. And I think it will happen. If you think about the indie films, a few people can do it today versus someone we're trying to do like 50 years ago. The quality of our cameras, the quality of everything that we have today, it's just a lot higher and the cost is a lot lower.
Well, there's so much we've covered today around the use of technology in the creative industry. I absolutely loved every moment of it. And we're now at the fun part of the podcast. So that's where I'm going to ask you to have a personal touch of, or leave everyone listening with a personal touch of inspiration by sharing either a book that has inspired you or a go-to song for when you just need to get your head in the zone, or a song that's important to you.
Yeah, so there's a book called On Photography. It's published in 1977.
Yeah.
By Susan Sontag. That's a very interesting book. It kind of predicted like everything we experience today from Instagram and TikTok, but like 30 years ahead of time.
Wow.
Talk about like the philosophy of photography, why people take photograph, what does it mean for video, and I think that's a very inspiring book. And because it's able to see where this whole Instagram and TikTok, it's ahead of time, you can also argue it actually went beyond and trying to predict what's going to happen in 30 years, right? What's going to happen in 2050? What does photography mean? So I think that's a very, very good book, just for anybody who are into visual mediums. In terms of songs, I mean, I don't have like a fixated music at any given time, but always like the band Fish. Fish is a kind of a jam band where they do a lot of kind of jazzy and blues type of music, and they have a song called Cities, where it basically talk about like finding your own city to live in, which is this aspiration of don't follow what life's provided to you, like actually trying to understand what you want and then pursue it and be more just more, I would say, purposeful, So, I think most people, they live in the city because either their work got them to where they are. They never thought about, okay, like, if I were a free person, I want to live in this kind of city that fits me and, that fits my personality. It's a song that my interpretation is really about being purposeful about your life.
Oh man, I need to check both of these out. So I will add the song to our Spotify playlist and the book to our Amazon wishlist. It sounds like I must buy that one. I'm very intrigued. Before I let you go, obviously people can download the Polarr app, I would imagine, on Android and the Apple Store. Is there a website to go with it, or what's the best way of joining your community and sharing ideas, or even contacting your team? What's the best starting point for everything?
Just, my email is my first name, Borui, Borui @polarr.com. And you can also visit polarr.com, Pollarr.com. And you can find our creator community, our Discord servers, and of course, all the apps that we have there.
Like I said at the very beginning, there are so many different creative apps out there on the app stores at the moment. But what really stands out from what you guys are doing is it's by creators for creators. And I think that passion for what you do really came across today. And it's also about this unique ecosystem designed to enable creativity within all your community and empower creators to monetize their feeds and those workflows. So love chatting with you today. I'd love to stay in touch. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing all that and your personal story too, and leaving us with a great song and book. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
I just love how they're empowering creators with tools and the Sharo ecosystem that they're building here, and how they're committed to ensuring its creators are fairly compensated for their creativity and allowing them to monetize their workflows. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, about monetizing your unique visual identity, the workflows that you create, and also the creative suite of apps out there. There are so many now. What do you use? What do you like? What do you not like? Please, I'd love for you to share the ones that you recommend, whether they're Polarr or not, because today's conversation was about me and today's guest. But I want to bring you into this conversation. You've probably got so much more experience and experienced some good and bad apps. I want to hear about them all. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. Let's keep this conversation going, and maybe we can all revamp our creative apps and focus on creating some cool stuff together. But that's it for today's episode, so thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.